Welcome to Winning Inside, the show where we follow the journey from feeling defeated to winning. Here are your hosts, Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman.
Hello, amazing people. Welcome to the Winning Inside podcast, where we discuss real issues, insights, and solutions to help you thrive in your day-to-day lives.
We know life happens, and we can choose to be a spectator or a participant. Michelle, good morning, good afternoon,
Good morning.
good evening. How are you?
I'm well. I'm I wanted my internet is a little fuzzy, as you know.
Mhm.
And so I've got all of these thoughts going on as we're recording this, since we use the internet to record this and to be in separate places, but still be able to share this podcast together. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I really take some of these small things in my life for granted.
Yes.
You know, like fast internet. We're not dialing up anymore. And yes, I know I'm aging myself that way, but it's one of those things that we take for granted until we don't have it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, wow. I am so grateful for internet. Thank you, internet. Thank you, internet world and God and all the things.
Yes, interwebs. Thank you for being stable and consistent and high speed usually. We appreciate that. And it's interesting how it's changed how we record this, because one of the things we do, as you spoke about earlier, was that we look at each other for body language, hand gestures, facial expressions as we're smiling and giggling on screen, and we're engaging visually. But you, the listener, is only hearing us audibly. So you're not seeing any of those cues. What it's allowing us to do is really consider how, as a listener, you receive this, because you don't see the body language, the inflections, the facial expressions. You don't see any of that, the giggling, the hype in our face if we're laughing, or any of the emotions that you can visibly see. So now we're experiencing this the way that our listeners experience this. And hopefully we can learn some things that will help us to deliver a better show to you and be more present with you and with one another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, this week, we wanted to talk a little bit about small wins.
Yes.
And I think there's it's so interesting because, again, being in this industry, in life coaching and executive coaching industry, we oftentimes fixate and focus on these big, grandiose goals. And while we acknowledge and while we know that every single small win, every single step towards that big, big goal is in fact critical. They're all critically important, right?
Yes.
And some of those small steps are failures, and they may feel like we're moving backwards, but we're not. It's almost like we're just clearing the path towards our goal, right? That's the way that I sort of look at it, is if we're creating our own path towards a goal. And so sometimes a failure is like, well, it's not a clear path, so I'm going to have to just clear that for myself. And sometimes it's a failure and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So one of those things that we really, again, take for granted, kind of like I take for granted high-speed internet, it's the small wins that show up on our path to greatness and show up on our path to great goals.
Exactly. And it's interesting we're talking about this week. And I've got to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Antonio Borrego, who is out there in the bayous of Louisiana, great individual. But he reached out and asked us to do a show on small wins that enable you to get to the big win or the big goal. And I was like, what a great topic to talk about. So Antonio Borrego, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for the comment. And we are doing this show for you. So thank you for enabling us to share and add value to our listeners. Boom. But yeah, they say the journey of 1,000 steps or 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And we don't always acknowledge those steps in between, the interim steps, but it's definitely those interim steps, i.e. those wins, those stages, those phases that get us to the ultimate goal or the win that we were looking for. And there's an energy lift that you get when you celebrate a win. It's the reason why I like to start my day acknowledging wins. It's why we always start with gratitude, because those things excite us and help us to keep going. So those milestones are beneficial in our lives. And hopefully we can talk about that a little bit so you understand what we're talking about when we say that, because you will see them in your own lives too.
Absolutely. So I'll share recently for me, one of the things that, as I've probably discussed in the past on this podcast, is that I'm not big into social media. It's not something that I don't know, I don't necessarily enjoy it. I think that there's a lot of pros and cons that exist around social media. And so, with that, I really stayed away from utilizing it for my business. Now,
Yes.
every single coach that I've personally had, as well as some peers, have always encouraged me to leverage social media to at least just share my voice, right? Have it be a space to collect my thoughts around the people that I serve. And I serve women who are in life transitions. And so but who would know that if I'm not sharing that, right?
Yeah.
And the irony is that essentially I've gotten a lot of referrals, and quite a few of them have been men, and that's fine too, because a coach can truly help anybody. It has very little to do with, gender or anything. It really, what it has to do with just being open and receptive to who I am as a coach and who they are as a client, blah, blah, blah. All that being said, I was not using social media. And so this week I actually posted last night, and then first thing this morning, well, not very first thing, because I have a whole practice that I do in the morning too, but right after that I posted another post. And so a lot of people might look at that and think, okay, yeah, so where are the other 2,000 posts? Because I really could have been doing this for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But I'm really celebrating it as like, this is really exciting. Like, and it's a whole new perspective for me to not be so hard on myself, even as I'm going through this process of just using my social media handle as a place to capture my thoughts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I was like totally celebrating it. I know Cheddy, we got on our call today and I'm like high energy, even though I feel a little tired because I've been up since 4:30 a.m. Like that's fine. But even though I feel a little bit sleepy, I feel energized at the same time.
Yes.
So it's really interesting when we celebrate these small wins, the amount of sort of momentum that's created from it, because you feel this positive, powerful energy about you.
I love the fact that you said that, positive, powerful energy, because it's that positive, powerful energy that enables you to go the next round, the next step, the next level, the next class, the next section, or whatever it is, the next step of your journey. And sometimes you need the accomplishment of knowing, hey, I just did this thing. This is awesome. I can keep going. Because when you look at a situation, you can look at it one of two ways: how far you've come, or how far you've gone, or how far you have to go. I mean, those are realities. You've got what you've done before and what you've got to do ahead. And a lot of times, if we look at how far we have to continue to go, sometimes we get tired and like, I can't go. It's too far. It's so long. But that can be very fatiguing. But think about what you've done. When you think about, wow, I did that. I thought that was insurmountable. I thought that was impossible, but I did it. That's going to inspire you and encourage you. But like, I can keep going. I'm going to take another step and do it again. So those small wins and celebrating them really can be the principal catalyst to help you go the next step, the next length, whatever it is, that's the next part of your journey. Because we sometimes need to kind of motivate ourselves and celebrate the fact that we've come so far, to invigorate us to continue going thus far and keep going even further.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is that element of just taking a very small moment to take stock of where you're at. And like you said, if you're looking at how far you've come already, and it doesn't matter if you're only 1% of 100% of the way there, we don't actually ever know what it's going to take to get us to our goal. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take. We don't know exactly how much time it's going to take until we start down that path. So it doesn't matter how far you've gone. It's just like knowing that we're making progress and taking a moment. That's the thing. I always um, offer that you want to give yourself a little bit of space, just moments of time. And it doesn't have to be any more than 5 to 10 seconds where you're really just looking at where you're at and thinking of the last win that you've had and just like, I call it breathing into that space.
Ooh.
So it's like recreating the feeling in your body. And it's the same thing that as athletes, what we always used to do is we would visualize a game, right? And we would visualize ourselves. I was a volleyball player. So I would visualize myself, attacking the ball, getting a kill. I would visualize myself on defense. I would visualize myself serving the ball and where I wanted to place it. So taking time to visualize that, but also not forgetting to visualize the success, the win, the celebration, because even as we create that vision in our brains, we can actually create the energy in our bodies in that moment.
Yes.
So that when we're taking actions from that space with that energy, it creates that momentum, that positive, powerful momentum to take actions from that space of like success. You're already thinking about success as you're taking action.
And what's so good about that is it just, it really does cause a shift in you. I'll tell you, one of the things I do with some of my clients is I'll have them write a letter to themselves, their future selves. Write a letter like a year from now when they've accomplished some goal, celebrating the fact that they've accomplished this goal and articulating how hard it was, how many times they wanted to quit, how many people doubted them, how they doubted themselves, but yet they persevered, did it, and somehow made it happen. Writing that letter ahead of time honestly, it's the same thing as when you say visualize. It's just they're visualizing the success that they expect to have in the future and they're writing it out. And sometimes it'll bring people to tears when they do that because they're feeling those emotions. They're feeling that sense of victory now, which can help them to start because they can get to the end and they want to get to the point where they open that letter and can celebrate opening the celebratory letter that they wrote a year ago. So it's one of the things that I do with some of my clients that just really just excite them. And it really is to do what you said. It's to visualize the win, the success, the accomplishment of the goal. And it's a beautiful thing. And Michelle, it's so powerful because you've won twice. You won in your mind and you win on the field, on the court. You knocked it out twice. So you've already prepped yourself for that victory, that excitement. It's not going to surprise you when you do win because you've already prepared for it. You've already celebrated it. Now you're just like, there it is. And it's just, it's what winners do. It's what winning is about. It's having the belief that you can do this. And I'm sorry, it is great to celebrate a win. I don't care what anybody says. It is a great feeling, whatever win it is. Look at kids when they celebrate a win, they're doing a little dance or they're singing and they're happy and they're cheering. Just your ability to have that exuberance is powerful and it infects other people. It infects other people. So,
exactly.
Love it.
You were probably like picturing little kids. It's like, this is the best thing. I love that metaphor because it's like you kind of look at it as, what if we were little kids, right? Or, I mean, we can talk about our inner child all we want to, but when we see a child that we love, whether it's our own child or, a friend's child, whatever, niece, nephew, anything, and you see them do something so simple and you lose your ever loving shit about it, right? Because you're like, that's amazing. They stood up, right?
Yeah.
Or they rolled over. And it's like we all celebrate that moment. And the kids just like, I did something awesome, right? And you know what that feeling is. And everybody can connect to and relate to that feeling, or, at least on some level. And I think it's like, that's what we're talking about in terms of celebrating small wins. Like, it's not just an acknowledgement of like, cool, I accomplished that. It's like a literally fanfare, fireworks, horns, and confetti. Like you did that thing.
Yes.
And it seems absurd, just like it may seem absurd when a child rocks himself back and forth for the first time. And you're just like, oh my God. But that's the level that can make such powerful change within you.
Yes.
So, yes, if you want to acknowledge it and just be like, cool, I did it. That's awesome. Like, I'm going to take something away from that and be very mellow about it. But like, we encourage you to try to take it a step further. Like, go just bonkers over yourself and super celebrate those little wins.
All right. I like it when you challenge me because, first of all, I'm like, challenge for me, it's like game on. I'm going to apply that this week, starting today. But also for the listeners, you should apply that in your own life. Celebrate your wins. One thing that sometimes I'm in a speaking event, I'll say that wins precede wins. I say that a lot because, and this is the reason why I like starting my day with what I call a win, a spark, and a smile, because you start your day with a win, it precedes other wins. And then you get this feeling of, man, I won. I just did something. The more you do that, the more it's going to infuse you with a certain level of confidence, which may just be the right level of confidence to get through a challenging situation or to overcome an objection or to do something that might be like a dragon that you could get to slay because you have the confidence to do it at that time. So you're really giving yourself a shot of confidence, a confidence boost, believing in yourself. It's going to help you to walk with confidence because you're walking around because you won. You won at something, you accomplished something, and boom, that's going to change the way people perceive you because people can see when you're exuding this level of confidence, this level of ease, this level of, yeah, I got this. I just did that. It says something about yourselves. And that self-assurance is self-assuring for other people too. So put that in your pocket because there's some great benefits from doing that. I love that, Michelle.
Yeah. And I want to also acknowledge that a small win or a win in general, let's just call it a win, right?
Yes.
It can be different on different days, right?
Yes.
So I have dealt with depression for many, many years. And sometimes a win is, getting out of bed and like having a morning routine and doing all those things. Right. And I'm just like, yes, that's a win. Right.
Exactly.
I may not even feel like it's a win, but that's how small to that level, like something seemingly, again, insignificant or something that we seem to take for granted that it may be easy sometimes or not easy sometimes. Or for me this week, a small win was posting on social media.
Yes.
A small win was I went and played pickleball with one friend and people that I didn't know. And it was like so fun. And
nice.
Wasn't going to go. But these kinds of little wins, they shift and change and evolve. But if you just gave yourself every single day to take time to acknowledge one win for that day, right? And that's why we call it small wins, because they can be so powerful. And today, a small win may have been getting up and going to work out before I took my son to school. Yes. Tomorrow, a small win may be to make my bed. Like it just changes on the day, but taking time to celebrate yourself for some win for that day is setting yourself up for more positive energy as you move through the week. It's setting yourself up to look for the wins because you're setting an intention to practice it. So now you're going to be more consciously aware of where those wins are, where they're occurring. And you're also going to be more aware of where other people's wins are, and you're going to acknowledge them. And it's going to make other people feel good too.
Yes, exactly. I think that's 100% true. And, wins are interesting because my big win for today, I did so many things, accomplished so much in the middle of just the day. Like before we got on this call this morning, I did so many things and it was like, wow, I did all this stuff and I'm back here for the podcast. This is great. I just felt like I was checking off boxes. And the more I did it, the more efficient I felt. But all of that came from my win of last week, where I actually got some real deal rest and took a self-care week where I did manis and pedis and hikes and relaxed and rested and just chilled out. And my whole body felt refreshed, renewed, reinvigorated. I feel refocused. And I feel like I have so much more mental clarity than I did a week and a half ago. So I'm glad I did it. That was one of my wins. If you think about your own lives, consider the things in your life that you may think are mundane and routine, but those are actually wins. When you accomplish something that you set out to do, that's a win. When you do something that was hard and you complete it, that's a win. So there are many opportunities in your life when you think about it to celebrate and accomplish and recognize these small wins. But then again, as Michelle said, a win is a win and you are winners. So stay amazing. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, follow, share, and most importantly, use whatever adds value to your amazing life.
And remember, even if life puts barriers in our way, we are still moving forward. Sign in again for a new episode of Winning Inside.
Thank you for listening to Winning Inside with Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to click the follow button, rate and review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcast. You can connect with Cheddy and Michelle at winninginside.io. Keep listening. Another episode is coming soon.